So with that, ladies and gentlemen, let's proceed to our first plenary session of the day. And I hope you're excited because from one inspiring leader to our first speaker. He is the founder of the highly respected Franchise Relationships Institute and has been a business psychologist for 37 years. His unique insights into how franchisees and franchisors can maximize their success comes from his extensive research and practical work with over 500 franchise brands and over 40,000 franchisees. They say no one understands what it takes to succeed in franchising like this guy does. He is author of several best-selling franchising books, including Profitable Partnerships, and developer of many influential franchising models, such as the franchisee factor. He's also been the recipient of numerous awards for his contribution to the global franchising sector, including the 2018 IFA Crystal Compass Award and induction into the Australian Franchise Hall of Fame. Listen up, everybody. This should be fun and very informative indeed. We got Mr. Greg Nathan. Hey, Greg. Good morning from the Philippines.
What a pleasure and a privilege to be back, and so exciting to be with you all again and talk about the importance of the franchise relationship for everybody's future success. Now, I'm going to share some slides with you. And there we go.
Looking forward, Greg. Take it away.
Yep, good. Now, I'd like to make this session as interactive as possible. So please feel free to share your comments in the chat feed and also to ask questions in the Q&A box. And let's start with a check-in. And you need to, everybody, I'm asking you, open your chat feed. I know you're a very chatty group. And so I'm talking about the chat feed. And I have a question for you.
Okay.
How is your physical energy on a scale of 0 to 10?
Oh, wow. Everybody, sign up in the chat. Physical energy. I'll help you out with this one. 10. Hernan Ertugol said 10. 10 also from James. James Hero Galman. Then he changed it to 5. Martin Jose. Rosalie Perez. Wow, that's a lot. Sammy Boy. Someone even said 19. Alan Cow said 19. Jenny Kim, Isa, Wella, wow, everything's just jumping up. Looks like everybody's got good energy, Greg.
That's what we like to see, and nobody has put 0. I was interested if someone was unconscious and still able to type, I'd be very impressed.
The lowest I've seen is 5, so we got good energy today.
Good energy, and it's averaging at 9.76, which is just amazing. Now, wow. I have a question for everybody. I want you to think about the process of thinking about your energy and giving it a number. Does it cause your energy to change a little bit? If you're already at 10, maybe you've gone up to 11. But the technique of reflecting inwardly and naming what's going on for you, it's a really good way of getting our brain to function at a higher level under pressure. And at the moment, with so much uncertainty and stress, I think we all need to ensure we're functioning at our best, right? Don't we? So let's have a look at what we're going to cover in the session. So we're going to look at how change impacts on relationships, why some personal and business relationships are likely to feel strained at the moment. I'll give you some tips on what you can do to improve your relationships. We'll talk about 3 characteristics of sustainably great franchise networks. I'll share some research with you on how the attributes of franchisees and your franchising culture from the franchisor team affects franchisee sales and profitability and performance and delivery of the customer experience. We'll look at some important lessons on what's been going on in Australia in the franchising sector and the implications for all of us on the call. And I'll give you some insights into the psychology of the franchise relationship. And we'll take some questions as well. Now, if you want to ask any questions as we go, please put them into the Q&A feed. And Issa, you can put those questions to me as we go along.
I would. Greg, though there's a little concern, could you kindly come closer to your laptop? Yes, because they are saying your audio is a bit low and everyone is keen to hear.
Yeah, is that a little better?
Yes, the closer you are to the screen, you are much better. Thank you for that, Greg. Looking
Lovely.
forward.
Now, I want you to imagine for a moment that we're sailing a boat and we're going across a very calm bay. There's a gentle breeze and the hull in the boat has got a little bit of rot in it, but it doesn't really matter at the moment. And the sails might have a little bit of a tear, but at the moment it doesn't matter. But now we're in rough seas. There's strong winds. Our boat is getting bashed around. The sails are stretched to the limit. And as the rot gives way in the hull, the water's going to start to come in and we're soon going to be in a bit of trouble. And relationships are like this. In calm, predictable times, any underlying tensions are not going to cause any major problem. But as we get a lot of change, it's going to stretch our coping resources. Existing relationships are likely to get under strain and you may start to get some conflict emerging. Now, some of you may have experienced recently an increase in your relationship tensions, maybe at home, maybe at work. This is normal during periods of intense change. And I just want to encourage you, I'm going to give you some tips now. If you are feeling a little bit more tension, maybe you've locked in with your family at home and things are a little intense, to help to strengthen your relationships so you can concentrate on navigating through these waves of change. And even in calm waters, we've found in a franchise relationship where you're sharing a brand, it can create from time to time a certain level of tension. So let's look at 8 tips to help you resolve any issues that may arise with your colleagues, your staff, your customers, or your franchisees or your franchisor, because I know we've got both franchisees and franchisors on the call today. Now, some of you may have seen these. I put out a free tip every 2 weeks. And if you'd like to be on the free tip list at the end of this session, I'll give you a way to register for that. But as I go through these, I want you to keep an important word in mind. And that word is empathy. Now, empathy means that you are able to understand another person's point of view, which is very powerful, and you also wish the best for another person. So empathy's got 2 elements for it: wishing well for somebody and also understanding what's going on for them. So my first point is this: you need to listen very carefully to what the other person is saying if there's a disagreement, and listen for this understanding of what they're telling you, not just the words that they're using, what they're feeling. And if you can paraphrase back to the person what you heard, why this is important to them, it's very powerful and it's a very practical way to practice empathy. So that's my first point. My second point would be to recognize what you have in common. Now, 2 things that are always going to connect the franchisor and the franchisee is a shared passion for the brand and a shared commitment to looking after customers, because ultimately we want to create happy customers. We all make money ultimately from the customer. So these are the 2 things we've got in common. Now, when you've got a disagreement with somebody, often our mind goes to the difference and it becomes bigger than it really is. But when you focus on what you share, it brings you together and you will feel more positive in your self-guarantee. Now, my third point is about expressing appreciation. So even small gestures, a thank you costs nothing, but it does generate goodwill in other people and in yourself as well. Now, my fourth point is about forgiveness. Things happen in life that are sometimes not fair. Sometimes we feel something has been done to us that we feel resentful about or angry about. The problem is that that emotion hurts us more than it hurts the other person. So I think it is important to be able to rise above any emotional feelings and let it go and forgive and forget, because the resentment ultimately can actually create health problems for us, emotional problems, physical problems, if we don't let go and be generous. Now, my next point is about recurring niggles, because conflict never just appears out of the blue. It builds up over time. And suddenly you find you make an innocent comment and somebody blows up in anger. You say, whoa, where did that come from? it's been building up over time. Now, if you are feeling resentful or angry about something, I think it is important you talk to the person about it, but you do it in a calm way. You take responsibility for how you feel and why it's important to you, and you stick to the facts. It helps if you can use I words like I am feeling frustrated because of the way our meetings are conducted, because they run over and it causes problems for me in meeting my other commitments. This is going to be much better than you saying, you cause me problems because you're always late for meetings. That sort of blaming language turns you into a victim, and it actually makes the other person defensive. I now want to move on to my next point, number 6, which is about the power of diversity. And there's a lot of discussion today about diversity. If you look at nature, it's the most beautiful example of diversity. There's different animals and plants, and this is what makes nature so beautiful and fantastic. Now, we don't want to have an organization of people who are just the same as you. And I'm talking to the leaders on the call here. You need to get people around you who are different from you. You can't have everybody who's creative. You need very practical people to work with. You can't have everybody who's outgoing and talking all the time, because no one's going to be doing any listening. You can't have people who are all warm and empathetic, so empathetic that no one can make a tough decision when a tough decision needs to be made. You understand my point? That we need all sorts of people. So often conflict occurs because you've got a different personality to somebody else and you're clashing about that. Maybe you're more analytical and they're more emotional. Maybe you're more fast driving and they're a little bit more slow and methodical. Now, the thing is to try and value the difference. And another little tip, if you want to build empathy in yourself as a skill, and this is a fantastic life skill to have, every time that you value something in somebody that is very different from you, it's like doing a workout, and it strengthens your empathy muscles and it makes you a better human being. Now, number 7 is my favorite. There's a lot of discussion today about the importance of a growth mindset. There's a beautiful book by Carol Dweck about growth mindset. She spent her life devoted to understanding what helps young people to grow and flourish in life. But what we're talking about with a growth mindset is somebody who is committed to improving themselves rather than proving themselves. I want you to think about this for a moment. A person who's always trying to prove how good they are, how competent they are, how much they've got done, it's wasting energy and time. It means you've got an insecure person. The person who wants to improve, seeks feedback, is humble, is open to growing. That person is going to truly make a difference in the world. Now, the antidote to trying to prove yourself and justify yourself. So often when we're in a disagreement with someone, you're trying to make yourself right, but that makes the other person wrong. And when somebody makes you wrong, it's not a very good feeling. So my recommendation is, if there's tension in a relationship, show a little bit of humility and be curious to understand the other person's point of view, and be prepared to hold strong opinions loosely. You may have a view about something, but listen for evidence to the contrary, because a wise person changes their mind based on evidence and information. Now, a benefit for you, for the health of your brain, is when you have a curious mindset, it actually stimulates dopamine, which is a very healthy chemical, which makes your brain work better. So that's a side benefit, as well as improving your relationships. And finally, it's okay if you are stuck in a relationship to seek help from an outside person, a friend, a colleague, a mediator. In Australia, we have mandatory mediation if there is a conflict between the franchisor and the franchisee. And mediation achieves success in resolving conflicts in over 70% of cases. And it is a fraction of the cost of people getting lawyers involved and suing each other. Now, I have a question for all of you on the call. I want you to think about what is something that you've done recently to help maintain a healthy personal or franchise relationship. Something that could be a little gesture, something that you've done for somebody. And could I ask you to put that in the feed, please, in the chat feed? What
Here
is
we
something
go.
done? Yeah.
Yes, everybody. Oh, yeah, I love it. Muriel Villanueva just said, just simply ask how they're doing. In Filipino, we call that kamustahan. I mean, there's no more excuse nowadays, right? The word is kamusta. How are you?
Lovely.
So hopefully you'll get to use that, Greg. Kamusta? Oh, being
Kamusta.
transparent
What
to
else
my
have we got coming in?
franchisees. Yes. Oh, DG Puyat says being transparent to my franchisees. Sammy Boy said trust the person or business and be transparent. Oh, someone said being grateful. Vincent Sampson.
Beautiful. Gratitude is like medicine. When you show gratitude to someone, it's very good for your health, and obviously it makes them feel good as well.
Yeah.
Thank you, Issa.
Thank you. One last. Also, just saying, wishing them well. Just wishing them well from Monica Rojas. Thank you. Thank you for your replies, everybody.
Keep your comments coming through. And again, if you have a specific question, put it in the Q&A box, and Issa will ask me as we go. Now, I think to help you understand how I have arrived at the conclusions that I'm sharing with you, I want to spend a few minutes just explaining why the Franchise Relationship Institute exists, why we do what we do. Before I founded the Franchise Relationships Institute 32 years ago, I was a psychologist working at the university doing neuroscience research. And I had also been a franchisee with a bakery group, and I'd also worked as a franchisor, senior executive, running this retail bakery group called Brumby's Bakeries. And because of my psychology background, I was very interested in the nature of the relationship between the franchisor and the franchisee. Because when I was a franchisee, I seemed to always be at loggerheads with my franchisor team. And when I was on the franchisor team, I seemed to often be at loggerheads with my franchisees. And there was no training around to explain what was going on. There was no decent books I could read on how I could be successful as a franchisee or a franchisor. So I founded FRI, we called it, the Franchise Relationships Institute, to find answers to these challenges that I'd seen and experienced, and then share these with the rest of the world, like we're doing right now. I'm living my dream at the moment, talking to you about this stuff, because I know how important it is. Now, as specialists in the psychology of the franchise relationship, we're passionate about our mission, which is to foster the creation of profitable partnerships in the global franchising sector. And for 32 years, we've been privileged to conduct research and education programs with over 500 different brands in 16 countries. We're continually identifying best practice and creating tools and models and books and education programs to help you. And we're very passionate about what we do, because when I was a franchisee and a franchisor executive, I made the same mistake that many people consistently make that I work with, and maybe some of you are making at the moment on this call. And it's this: I thought, because I knew everything about baking and selling bread, that I could effectively lead and motivate my franchisees. I want you to think about this for a moment. Do you think that just because you know everything about your industry, does that make you a great franchisor? No, it doesn't. It's only half of the equation. The reality is that all franchisees and franchisors on the planet are in two businesses. You are in the business of selling your products and services, and you're in the business of franchising. So I want to talk with you about the business of franchising for a moment. Now, over the past 32 years, we've worked with hundreds of brands like this, and we've learned that they all have similar challenges. The best franchisors draw on the same best practices, but not all franchise networks are in the same league. And I would classify, and you will know some of these brands, some of them are more Australian-based brands, but the top 20% of brands are the ones that have grown consistently for over 25 years. They've had consistent levels of profitability for the franchisor and the franchisees, and they've got high levels of franchisee satisfaction. And there's 3 reasons for this. And I'm going to share these with you now. Now, the first one is that they understand they are clearly in the franchising business and they have to apply these best practices. So let's just talk about innovation for a moment. There's been a lot of fantastic videos on our meeting so far about our digital initiatives and so on and so forth. Now, if you want to be at the top of your game, you've got to be constantly innovating and changing the way you do business. And the challenge we have is the franchisor's capacity to innovate is always going to outstrip a franchisee's ability to accommodate. So just think about that for a moment. The franchisor is always going to be pushing a little bit ahead of the franchisees. Now, because all networks have to innovate, this can create tension. Now, recently I was talking with Graham Wymiller, who is the global CEO of BNI. And Graham was sharing with me that earlier this year, they transitioned their entire franchise network of nearly 10,000 BNI chapters in 70 countries from face-to-face meetings to virtual meetings in 10 days. So that's massive change. Now, to manage innovation at this level, we need to understand the sigmoid curve, which you've got on the screen here. I call it the curve of life. It applies to every living thing on the planet: people, plants, animals, careers, and of course, products and businesses. Now, what it's telling us is that when you introduce something new, like a new business, a new system, new leadership, there is always going to be a struggle. You're going to have a dip in performance while there's adjustments and people are coming to terms with the changes and so on. And then you will start to get traction. Now, just like many of you have been working from home, initially, this was a challenge for you as you tried to work out where are you going to sit and getting your internet working and so on. Now, we may do our best to respond and adjust, but it does take time. Now, nothing is forever. So even once we start to succeed and grow, there's going to be a point at which if we don't change again, we're going to decline. And so every 3 to 5 years, you need to take your business through a massive reinvention. I'm going through this at the moment in my business. So we've brought in new leadership, we've brought on new people, we're putting in new systems, and it's been very stressful and hard. And we've been working through this dip, and now we're starting to get some traction. And in a few years' time, we'll go through the curve again, and then we'll go through the curve again. Over 32 years, I've gone through this curve 8 times in my business. So we need to understand how to bring our franchisees with us as we're going through the change. So that's the first thing. And what I'm teaching you today about listening and empathy and collaboration is the way we do this. Now, the second characteristic is about clarity of purpose. Often this revolves around making a positive difference to the community, putting all major decisions through a filter about, is this right for our brand? Is this right for our people, for our culture, for our franchisees, for our shareholders, and so on and so forth? But an important question you really need to get clear on is, who is the most important stakeholder in your franchise network? And I'd like to do a poll with you now and hear your opinion on who you think is the most important stakeholder in a franchise network.
Ooh, everybody, please do submit. Just click and submit. And let's be honest, okay? I think a lot of people would try to. This should be interesting, Greg.
Very interesting.
Really.
I can see the responses coming in.
Customers. Ooh, from Erdem. Who is the most important stakeholder in a franchise network? Is there such a thing as a right answer, Greg?
I'm going to propose an opinion, but some people may differ. So there's not a hard and fast right answer, but I'm going to make a suggestion.
All right. But only Erdem so far, well, at least in the chat. But of course, it is a poll, so I'm sure you're getting the answers.
Yeah. So
how's it coming?
The poll now.
Zoroaster Monleon also said customers.
Yeah.
Oh, so far, Ronnie.
Show the results.
Yeah, Ronnie De La Cruz, Baby Gutierrez, Audie De La Cruz, sorry, and yeah, Joseph Faith Borlaza. Here we go.
There you go. So can everybody see that?
Yes.
So 67%.
Customers, 67.
Are saying customers. Now, and I understand that. And the second highest is franchisees. Now, I'd like to tell you a story. So thank you, everybody, for responding. And this is one of these things. Remember, I said hold strong opinions loosely. So if you think it's the customer, I want you to listen to what I'm about to tell you. And maybe you want to change your mind, maybe not. We'll see. I want to introduce you to somebody. This is Cheryl Bachelder. Now, I interviewed Cheryl a few years ago when she was the CEO of Popeye's Chicken. They're a very successful North American franchise, 2,600 stores. She had previously led Popeyes through 5 years of consistent sales and profit growth. They had a 400% increase in their share price. They also had a queue of franchisees waiting, just wanting to open more stores and to get into that system. So a very successful group. Now, Cheryl told me that the single most important question that she and her executive team tackled when she became CEO, and she attributes the answer to this to their success, was the question we just tackled. And to achieve consensus on this, they locked themselves away on a retreat for several days. And after days of debate and discussion and soul searching, they concluded. Now, and let me just say, the marketing department were adamant it was the franchisees. The HR department was adamant it was the staff. The operations team were adamant it was the franchisees. The finance department were adamant it was the shareholders. But they came to the conclusion the franchisees were the most important group. They figured if franchisees are doing a great job in running their stores and motivating their staff, who are looking after the customers are going to get great service, the staff are going to be happy, sales are going to go up, the franchisors' revenue is going to go up through the royalties, the shareholders are going to make more money, and everyone's going to prosper. And she said from that point on, the company put a renewed emphasis on respecting and listening to franchisees. They had regular listening groups. Anytime a new initiative was rolled out, like, we were just talking about the innovation, it had to be taken to the franchisees to get some input from them. So they came on the journey with them. And I've always argued this. So I was very pleased when she told me her story, because if the franchisees are profitable and happy, everything else seems to fall into place. So in answer, Issa, my view is the franchisees are the most important stakeholder.
Let's see how everyone else will, like you said, hold strong opinions loosely. But I thought with your evidence and with your reasoning, it makes sense.
Thank you.
Thanks,
now, I'm talking about a franchise network. If you run a company-owned network, it's different. The staff and the customers then become more importantly for you to focus on. Now, let's look at the third characteristic of best practice in franchise networks. And this is a commitment to collaboration. Now, what that means is working together to maintain a competitive edge. So you need to come together and work on the things that generate the most value. And that middle overlapping area represents the culture of the business. And then there's outside areas that represent individual areas of accountability. Now, accountability is different from responsibility. You can't delegate accountability, but you can share responsibilities. Accountability, the buck stops with you. So let's start with what franchisees are accountable for. And the first thing is to create advocates for the business, for their business, and for the brand. And we do that by delivering an exceptional customer experience, right? And then the customers are going to keep coming back, and that's how you grow your sales. Your second accountability is to make sure you are making money. And you can only do that by driving your revenues and controlling your costs. And the third accountability, and this is the one that's often overlooked, is to participate with a positive attitude constructively in the franchise network by engaging in activities, by participating, by supporting brand initiatives. So that's the job of the franchisee. The franchisor has a different job. You also have 3 accountabilities. 1, you must lead with credibility. That's not command and control by telling people what to do. You lead through influence. And to do that, you need to be making good evidence-based decisions. You need to be trustworthy and transparent with information, and you need to genuinely care about the personal health and well-being of your franchisees as well as their business. Now, providing relevant support means that mature franchisees that have been with you for 9 years are going to need different things from you than a franchisee that's been with you for 9 months. So it's adjusting the support to suit the needs of the franchisee where they are on their journey. And protecting the brand means that you don't allow anyone to mess with your reputation. Your brand is your reputation. So you need to take that seriously as an accountability. And that's why we have brand standards. So if you ask a franchisee to do something to improve the look, uniforms, their vehicles, the standard of their food, or whatever it is, you need to explain to them the why you're asking them this. And that is to protect their investment in the brand and everybody else. So that makes sense for everybody. I hope it does. So these are 3 absolutely essential principles of driving high performance in a franchise network. Now, I want to hammer home an important point here. This is a chart of weekly sales. When I was the operations manager with Brumbies, I noticed that some of my stores were suddenly growing at an exponential rate, way ahead of the rest of the group. And you'll see here, there's 4 different points where these particular stores started to grow in sales. And I looked into it, I thought, what's going on here? And what I discovered was the only thing that changed was the franchisee who was running the business. Everything else was exactly the same. Same stores, same location, same staff, same equipment, same customer base. So I just want to talk about the role of the franchisee in driving performance for a moment. And I want to ask you all a question. And I want you to put your best guess into the chat feed, please. If I were to say, what percentage of a store's overall performance do you think is driven on average by the knowledge, attitude, skills, and habits of the franchisee? So what percentage is the franchisee as opposed to the system? Pop it in the feed.
Let's check. Okay, I love Erdem. He's always the first. He said 90%. Karen Jane said attitude. Sheila Martinez, 70%. Edward Dennis Centeno, 75%. Alan Cao is the lowest, 50%. So Jacqueline Rosary says both say 80. DG Suya, 95. Franchisee, 70% from Marilu.
Good.
Okay, most pretty much in the 70 and above.
Now, I put this to a group of senior executives, and one guy was up the front and he said 100% franchisee. And I said, so you're telling me your brand and systems are worthless? He goes, 50-50. Look, in reality, it's around 40%. Now, 40% is huge. 40% is the difference between success and failure. Look, your location makes a difference. The economics and the socio-economics of a particular territory makes a difference. Your systems, your support make a difference. But the franchisee, on average, about 40%. And now I want to talk with you about how you can influence this 40%, because you can also make a difference to their behavior. And I want to show you a study that we've conducted, because this question of how much does a person contribute to success, as a psychologist, it's fascinated me for years. And we've done a tremendous amount of research on this. Now, this particular study was published in a very prestigious business journal called the Journal of Business and Psychology. Now, 2 attributes that we know drive sales and profitability are the proactivity of a franchisee and their brand passion. All right, so the more proactive someone is, the more that they take responsibility for making things happen, and the more passionate they are about the brand, we know that's going to drive performance. It's just a fact. But what influence do you have as a franchise or team on the franchisee's performance? So we asked nearly 1,800 franchisees from 74 franchise networks, how supported do you feel by your franchisor team? In other words, do they feel that they belong to a supportive culture? And here's a couple of the questions that we asked to determine this. And this, by the way, we run a lot of franchisee satisfaction surveys, and so we're constantly researching these sorts of questions. And what we discovered is when the franchisee disagrees with these statements, they don't feel the love. Their proactivity drops, their brand passion drops, and that in turn has a dampening effect on their performance. Now, the good news is that if the franchisees agree with these statements and they feel they are part of a supportive network, their proactivity and their brand passion increase. So, yes, the caliber and mindset of your franchisees is going to have a huge impact on the success of your network. And you, I'm talking to all the franchisor people on the call, can have an influence on the franchisees' attitudes and behavior and performance. So now, I just want to recap. We've looked at change. We've looked at uncertainty and how this impacts on relationships. I've given you some tips to manage strains. We've looked at the characteristics of sustainably great franchise networks. I've emphasized the importance and the benefits of having a franchisee-centric culture where the franchisee is in the center, the most important stakeholder. I now want to just, in closing off, give you some insights because you wanted me to talk about the future of franchising. This is what's been going on in Australia, and it's likely to start to happen elsewhere in the world. Now, this woman is a journalist called Adele Ferguson, and that trophy that she's holding is an award for some of her articles, but that could be the head of some of Australia's largest franchisors. And the first company that she targeted in Australia was 7-Eleven. And her articles on 7-Eleven led to our federal government changing Australia's laws to make it legally, the franchisor legally responsible for the conduct of how their franchisees are treating their staff. So if franchisees are underpaying their staff in Australia, now the franchisor can be held accountable for this. This has been a massive shock to the sector in Australia and internationally. Now in America, they have been battling this law for 12 years with the National Labor Relations Board on the issue of whether franchisors are responsible for the employee practices of their franchisees. But her articles have led to a change in our laws. Then in 2017, she targeted a huge multi-brand franchisor that had 6 sub-brands called the Retail Food Group, or RFG. And she exposed poor conduct as a franchisor in how the franchisor was behaving with its franchisees. The problem was she didn't just go after RFG, she went after the whole franchising sector and started writing articles about how franchisors were being greedy and taking advantage of mum and dad franchisee investors. And RFG was decimated by this media attack. But the articles unfortunately damaged the franchising brand in Australia and resulted in a government inquiry into the whole franchising sector. And you can see here some of the headlines, and these are 2 senior politicians involved in this inquiry. And last year there was a report handed down by the government called Fairness in Franchising. And what the report says is that franchisors must be more transparent in how they deal with their franchisees, and they must be fair and reasonable in how they're working with their franchisees. Now, the task force, while COVID has hit us, the task force has gone underground, but it's going to re-emerge. And my prediction is this issue of fairness in franchising is going to become a big issue all around the world, including in the Philippines. So I'm encouraging you, get on the front foot, build a culture of transparency, build a culture of collaboration, build a culture of fairness. This is the right thing to do, but there are clear commercial benefits for you for doing this. Now, we've just completed a major study on franchisee satisfaction with over 7,000 franchisees on what drives what we call the ACE mindset. Now, ACE stands for advocacy. Franchisees will recommend your business to other people. Commitment, they will stay in the business and invest in your business and buy more businesses. Engagement, they will support your initiatives. They will be constructive. Now, wouldn't we all love franchisees to have more of an ACE mindset? Yeah. Now, the biggest predictor of whether or not a franchisee will have an ACE mindset is whether or not they feel their expectations are being met. Now, I'm not just talking about money and whether they're making enough money. I'm also talking about their expectations on how they feel they are being treated as human beings, particularly around respect, listening, and fairness. And this is why I push so hard at the start of my talk around empathy. Because if franchisees do not feel that you are empathizing with them and their challenges and their stresses, they are far less likely to engage and adopt this ACE mindset. Now, in this study, we also reviewed detailed comments from 1,800 franchisees who said they do not trust their franchisor. And we asked them, why not? And we analyzed all their comments. 3 factors accounted for 47% of the comments where trust had been broken. Self-serving decisions that they felt advantaged the franchisor at the expense of what was good for them. A lack of transparency and openness, including hiding information, not admitting to mistakes, and not consulting or asking and listening to them on issues that impact on them. So franchisors need to be very careful of the expectations of their franchisees. And I would argue one of the most important expectations we all have in life is to be listened to, taken seriously, and treated respectfully and fairly. Now, in conclusion, I just want to introduce you to a model. Some of you will have seen this model before if you've been in my classes about the emotional journey that a franchisee moves through with you in their relationship with you. Now, this is a study with 7,500 franchisees. The vertical axis is happiness. The horizontal axis is tenure. Look, you'll see this is real data. Franchisees start off very happy. Then about 2 to 3 years in, their satisfaction drops. And then as they adjust to their relationship with you, their happiness comes up, and it ends up about halfway between when they're at their happiest, when they're at their unhappiest. Those of you who are married will see a similar pattern here. There's many similarities between marriage and franchising. And unfortunately, in Australia at least, most franchise agreements last longer than most marriages, which I find very intriguing. So I just want to explain to you a model which will help you to manage these ups and downs in the franchise relationship. Now, this is my original model. I developed this model in 1992, and then we were able to validate it through our research. And I'll just tell you briefly my story, and it'll explain how the franchisee factor works. Now, when I first bought into the franchise with my business partner, I was filled with glee. And I borrowed some money. I had goals for the business. I was feeling optimistic, and I knew that through my hard work, we would be very successful, and we were. And our sales grew very quickly. 3 months in, my business partner took me through a P&L for the last 3 months, line by line. We looked at our revenue and we looked at our expenses. And one of the biggest expenses was the royalty fees that we were paying the franchisor. It was over $10,000. And I asked him, what do we get for our fees? And he said, look, it was in the agreement. We signed the agreement. We just have to pay the money. And he shrugged and said, we're doing a great job. Let's just focus on running our business. But I couldn't get this out of my head. What do I get for my fees? And the next time my field consultant came to visit me, I asked him, what do I get for my fees? And he said, you get the brand, you get the recipes, and you get the systems. And I said, what a load of rubbish. He said, that's why you're successful. And I said, no, I'm successful because of me, right? Now, this is human nature. When things go well in life, we attribute this to our hard work and our talent and our success. when things don't go well, oh, it's your fault. You didn't do that. You didn't do what you said you were to do, that you were going to do, and it was the environment and the economy and so on and so forth. So I was convinced that my success was all about me, even though my sales are rising and we're making money. Now, I had a lot of experience before becoming a franchisee running company-owned stores. So I knew how to run one of these businesses really well. And I started to experiment and make up my own products and change the recipes. And I started getting the stale bread that we would normally throw out at the end of the day because we can't sell it because we're a hot bread shop. And I made a bread and butter pudding based on a recipe of my mother's. And I made a huge batch of this bread and butter pudding. I sprinkled sugar on it and I sliced it up. We gave it out to customers as little tasters and we sold out within 2 hours. The next day I made more. We sold out within 2 hours. Now, I put signs all over my store about the bread and butter pudding. 3 days later, Ian came in to visit me, my field manager, and he nearly had a heart attack when he saw this unauthorized product that I was making and all the signs around the wall. And he said, you have to take this down. You can't make this. And he couldn't give me a good reason why I couldn't make it. So I said to him, if you can't help me make more money, I don't want to have a conversation with you. And he left. Now, the following day, I got a phone call from the managing director and he wanted to take me out to lunch. And I said, that's fine as long as you pay. That was my way of just teasing him a little bit. So we sat down in a cafe, we put in our order, and he said to me, Greg, how are you feeling about belonging to the group? Because I'm now in what I call the free stage. I don't like this. You can't tell me what to do. Those of you who've got teenage children will understand what I'm talking about. I'm independent. I know more than you. But he listened to me for 20 minutes without interrupting me, except to ask clarifying questions, and he was making notes. After 20 minutes, he said, Greg, I've got 8 points. I just want to summarize what you've said. Let's just pause for a minute. He read out the 8 points, and he totally understood how I felt and what I was saying. Total empathy. And at that point, he moved me from being in the free stage to what I call the C stage. He could see my point of view. He didn't agree with everything I said, but at least he gave me the respect of understanding me. We had a conversation, and as a result of that conversation, we were able to agree on how we were going to work together. And he moved me into what I call the we stage. So my challenge to all the franchisor executives on the call today is all your franchisees are going to go to a greater or lesser extent through this process. Some of them are going to be more deeply dissatisfied and they're going to go down here like I was. Some of them are going to get so angry, there's nothing you can do. And you may end up in a legal suit. But if you listen to them, show empathy, show respect, you will get them up very quickly back up to here. And then the relationship is what we call a collaborative relationship. Now, the last thing I want to tell you is we have a model called the Franchisor Wheel of Excellence. It's on the screen. In a few weeks' time, I'm going to be conducting a masterclass with the PFA on this Franchisor Excellence framework, the Franchisor Wheel that you've got here. And it covers off 5 areas that you need to be really good at if you're going to be a successful franchisor. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, you should talk to the PFA guys. They've done a great job in putting that on. And if you are wanting to connect and have access to free information about how to be a more successful franchisor, you can go to our website. You can sign up for my free tips, and I'll send you one of those every 2 weeks. And otherwise, I just wish you every success. Life is hard at the moment. We will succeed as long as we collaborate. And I wish you a fantastic rest of convention and a lovely weekend. I'm happy to take some questions if we have any.
Yes. Actually, there's just one so far in the Q&A because I think everyone is listening so aptly to you, Greg. Wonderful. Here's a question from Ching Paman. In the list of top franchises shown earlier, is that list as of 2020? And are these considered the top franchises in terms of what categories?
Great question. Now, what I put up was a list of a whole lot of companies that we work with, but that list wasn't all the top ones. Within that list, 20% of those companies are the top ones. Now, I will take the liberty of mentioning a few, all right? But I don't want to discriminate. But I would say, for instance, Anytime Fitness is a very good brand in most countries where that's operated. They do have master licenses, and it may differ depending on the country. Specsavers, a very strong brand in Australia and in Europe, excellent company. Baker's Delight, excellent organisation. Home Instead, an elderly care group, excellent organisation. So I wasn't saying they're all fantastic. And even some of the more well-known brands that I put up there, I wouldn't put in my top 20% because they've got too much conflict, or they don't pay enough attention to the profitability of the franchisees. Any other questions?
Actually, more comments, Greg. Everyone saying thank you, wonderful messages. Marvin Cuneta said how nice, because they learned something about franchise, that he needs to plan a better and negotiable business. Thank you for that. And the enlightening on how we can all better move forward. So Greg, it's not necessarily questions, but a lot of thank you messages.
Good. Thank you so much.
So on that note, how about you give us some final words? Franklin Cass was just saying everything was well explained. Any final words, Greg, to wrap it up for us?
What I'll do is, last time I was there, I had a guitar and we all sang together, and it was lovely because I know the Philippine people love to sing.
Yes, we do.
So I have a little, this is called a bouzouki, and I just thought I would just play you a little tune to finish off because I don't have anything else to say.
Okay, cool. Take it away, Greg. Beautiful, beautiful, ladies and gentlemen. Greg Nathan, our rock star. Oh, Greg, before we let you go, okay, there is a question. Okay, it just popped in. What do you think was the problem why 7-Eleven was called Attention?
Okay, great question.
Oh, Attention was called in Australia. What do you think?
What I'll do is I'll share some facts. This is a really good question.
Okay.
7-Eleven are an excellent company, and I've got in Australia and in other areas of the world, they really, and I know 7-Eleven are strong also in the
Philippines.
Yep. What the problem was franchisees were some franchisees were exploiting staff and underpaying them and getting them to do extra shifts. And in Australia, we have a lot of overseas students who work part-time to survive. And so some franchisees were saying to these staff, you work 20 hours, I'll pay you for 10 hours. You have to give me another 10 hours and don't tell anyone. And if you tell anyone, I'll report you to the immigration department and you'll get into trouble. Ooh. So the franchisees were doing the wrong thing, and the journalists found out about this and wrote the story about the franchisees. But they argued the franchisor should have known about this and should have been firmer on the bad behavior of some of the franchisees. So the franchisor got punished for the behavior of the franchisees. And this is why I'm saying, as a franchisor, you need to be very careful that your franchisees are not doing anything that could damage your reputation, which is your brand. Now, let me just say, in Australia, 7-Eleven did a magnificent job at stepping up. They looked into it, they faced into the problem, they fixed it, and they actually refunded the staff that had been underpaid. The franchisor, out of its own pocket, paid for that money, and a lot of franchisees lost their businesses as well for doing the wrong thing.
Okay.
But I thought, 7-Eleven behaved very well during that time.
Wonderful. Okay, now the questions just came in. I hope you don't mind, Greg. Speaking of fairness, how would you tackle this habit for Filipinos to imbibe? Fairness, how can Filipinos imbibe this habit? Fair.
Isa, can I ask you perhaps, because I obviously I'm not Filipino. Mm-hmm. I'll just say a few things, and then if you want to comment, add to that, feel free. All right?
Okay, sure.
the principle of fairness is hardwired into our brain. So if you look at animals that work together in groups, monkeys, dolphins, chimpanzees, and so on, there's often certain expectations the animals have of each other on how they're going to be treated. Mm-hmm. And there's even experiments to show that if you have two monkeys and you give one monkey a prize for doing a task, like a grape, they love the grapes, okay. and then the other monkey sees that and does the same task, and you give the monkey a piece of cucumber, which they don't like very much, but it's okay. The monkey that was given the cucumber throws a tantrum and gets angry because he says, you treated me unfairly. Yeah. So the principle of consistency and everybody being treated the same is universal. Now, how it plays out in the Philippines, I probably need your guidance, or maybe someone on the call might have a thought on this.
Well, okay, I hope nobody minds my saying this, but sometimes when it comes to playing fair, it's because maybe you're closer to the one running the business. You never know, right? A family member. Sometimes it's who you know. That's pretty much, unfortunately, a reality here in the Philippines. Again, I'm not speaking in behalf of PFA. It's just my observations also. And if I speak out loud for some of you, that's one. So what if you're like close, preferential treatments? How would you address that?
Yeah. And I think where possible, fairness means that you have criteria about how people are going to be rewarded, and that's understood by everybody. And if somebody fulfills the criteria, then they get rewarded. I mean, women have been treated unfairly for hundreds of years. We know this is a fact, and it's being changed slowly. Franchisors that have awards, like Franchisee of the Year award, it's very important that you make transparent the criteria. Mm-hmm. And whoever wins the award, you need to explain why they won the award. It's not because they're somebody's cousin or because you like them, so that would be probably a universal principle to follow.
Oh, thank you. I think that piece of advice you also just said, Greg, pretty much answers another question, which is letting the advice to local Filipino brands looking to franchise outside the Philippines because differences of culture. Again, as long as you spell out some sort of very transparent way of reward or good behavior and all that, that will always win, I think. And transparency and empathy.
What are the rules, and make sure we do follow the rules.
Yes, follow the rules. Sorry, everybody. Unfortunately, we do have to wrap up because of the time constraints. Thank you very much, Greg.